Welcome to the NAM podcast, where we bring you the voices that drive the mortgage industry. Join dynamic hosts Ginger Bell and Matt Shields as they dive into bold conversations with top experts, industry leaders, and change makers from across the country. From insider insights to game-changing trends, this is your front row seat to what's happening right now in the world of home finance.
Well, hi there. Welcome to another episode of the NAM podcast. My name is Ginger Bell, and I have my co-host with me, Matt Shields. Hey, Matt, how are you doing today?
Ginger, I'm doing so good. So excited to be here with you today.
I am too. And you know what? We have a very special guest, and I'm excited to hear about what she has to share because there are some very important updates that are coming up for all of our licensees. And so I want to introduce to you Elizabeth Richlinski, and she is a senior director at the NMLS. So, Elizabeth, did I get the name right?
You got it. Yeah,
Okay,
perfect.
good.
Yeah,
Yay.
Love it, love it.
it's not an easy
And
one.
well, and it's one of those things, and it's honestly one of the things that we're going to talk about in some of the NMLS updates is names and history and things like that. So that's
Yes.
kind of a good segue. So thank you for joining us. I know you're super busy. I know there's a lot of changes going on, so thanks for taking time out to be able to talk to us about some of the updates that are going on.
Yeah, really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so before we dive into that, I really want to, if you don't mind, to give just a kind of an overview of the NMLS. I think a lot of people, you've been around since 2008, 2009,
hmm
and we have a lot of new licensees. Matt heads up our NAM Young Professional Group.
Mhm.
And so I know, Matt, you see a lot of people who are just getting started or been into the industry for a couple of years. So they see
Yeah, a
this,
lot of 1 year, a lot of 2 year, just very
right?
new, very fresh.
Yeah, very new. And so it's like, okay, what is this NMLS thing all about? So,
Yeah.
if you can maybe give us like the 30,000 kind of overview of the NMLS and kind of how it came about and what you all do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been at NMLS for just over a decade, and I
Wow.
still find that I am learning something new about either how the system works or how the licensing situation across the states works. And so it is a lot to learn. And I know with those that are coming into the industry, like you said, it's like, what is this NMLS thing and how does it affect me? So I'm happy to tell you a little bit about that just to start. NMLS, like you said, was started in 2008. It was the direct result of the financial crisis. So this online system, it was designed to allow state regulators insight across the country about mortgage activities. That's how it started. That's because state regulators are those who are primarily responsible for regulation of the mortgage industry
Right.
when it comes to companies that aren't a federally chartered bank. So that's your brokers and many lenders. Um, NMLS then is the system of record too for other financial services industries, and that's where it's kind of expanded. So money services use NMLS, consumer finance companies, debt
Right.
companies. Those are now also companies that are on our system because those too are regulated by the states.
Yeah.
But
So more
what?
than just mortgage. So
Mhm,
that's the whole thing. Because what the NMLS has been able to provide is really a tracking system to be
mhm,
able to track the licensing requirements across all of the states. And
exactly.
every state, although you have a lot of the uniform requirements, some states do have different requirements. And so, Matt, I know for your young professionals that are new coming in, they might be like, well, why do I have to do something different in Florida or something different in Utah, right? And so
Yeah.
you guys oversee all of that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And while there are still different requirements across the states, the SAFE Act, which is what started NMLS back in 2008, that standardized many things, particularly for mortgage loan originators that didn't exist before or weren't standard before. So not only did it help state regulators with understanding the system and increase transparency, more oversight into bad actors, but it also brought about the standardization to how licensing was done in every state. So, for example, It's evolved from a situation where if you have multiple state licenses, you might have used to had to submit multiple forms to each of those agencies and take a different test for each of those agencies. Now we have one uniform form that every state looks at, and we have one uniform test that uniform test is what shows, if you're ready to join the industry and if you can get that license. So it's expanded just from this ability for regulators to have more insight to now an easier pathway for licensure for individuals and companies.
Yeah, and that's huge because when the SAFE Act first passed, every state had its own test.
Hmm.
And so if you were getting licensed in, Oregon, you would take one of the state tests. You still have your federal test. And then if you're getting licensed in Ohio, where Matt is, it would be a different test. And I know it was very cumbersome for the states to come up with all of those test questions.
Yep.
Nobody likes taking tests. I don't know of anybody who's like, I could take a test today. So having that standardized test is important. So that's great. And thank you for that. And I think that's important for people just to kind of have an idea of that oversight. But what we're here to talk about today is really something that's happening in April of 2026. And this ties into some big system changes and really, a bigger goal as far as the NMLS is to streamline, right? So
Yeah,
um, if for those who may not be closely following what's happening with the NMLS, tell me a little bit about what's happening. Or actually, this is after the fact, so obviously we're into May now. So what happened in April, April 18th, is that correct? Is when the
that's
update?
right.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, Saturday, April 18th.
On a Saturday.
Yes. Yeah, I'm happy to tell you a little bit about that. So, April 18th was a big release on the NMLS
And
side.
a relief.
A
It was
relief for some of us working late hours on this,
like
but
that.
also a software release. And it's part of a much larger overall modernization roadmap for the NMLS system. So over we call them phases, approximately 6 years, we are modernizing many big components of the NMLS system. In September of 2025, we released a really big update for mortgage loan originators and the companies that manage those originators. And we're doing this modernization in pieces like that because we're able to keep this legacy software in place that thousands of users use every day. So
Yeah.
it's not a shut off an old system, turn on the new one. Instead, we're doing it in a safe way so that we're not disrupting system processes. So we started with account management 2 years ago, and then our first focus is on individuals, which is why we released back in September a new workflow for applying to or amending an individual license. And these follow-on pieces in April are also still focused on the individual workflow, and it's focused on two areas. That's employment history reporting and disclosures, both for individuals in the system.
Okay. And so what should NAM members take now in our broker audience and loan originator audience to avoid delays as far as, because you have some compliance deadlines that'll be coming up with this, right? For the
Yes.
2027 renewal cycle. So what's the first thing that they should do to say, okay, I'm going to get ahead of this. What do I need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So with this introduction of this new functionality in the system for employment history and disclosures, there are now steps that every individual needs to take and that many companies need to take. Almost every mortgage company needs to take these steps now
Okay.
that we've made these updates. And we are hoping and encouraging strongly that everyone can do this by August 31st. You certainly can do it. It's an easy 10-minute process.
Okay.
We hope that people will set the time aside and take care of this spring or summer to really ensure a nice, smooth renewal process, which everyone wants a smooth renewal.
Yep.
Regulators do, the industry does, us working at NMLS do. So take
Right.
care of this summer, these few steps, and I'm happy to walk you through those steps, and that will ensure a straightforward and easy renewal.
Yeah. So do you, and so you're talking about two different, so companies, and this is important because for our broker owners, and obviously we're the National Association of Mortgage Brokers, so we do have a lot of our members are brokers.
Hmm.
So that's two things then. So they have their broker license, which would
Yep.
be considered the company, right? And
Yep.
they have their individual MLO license, which would be a separate thing. So they're going to have to do both of those then, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So why don't we start with the companies?
Perfect.
Because that sequentially, we encourage companies to take action first
Right.
and then instruct their LOs to go in and take action next.
Okay.
So that will make this as streamlined as possible. So there's a few things that companies need to do. The first is one of the major updates that was released in April is new information that's now on the company relationship. Company relationships created with an individual, and it's basically a handshake in the system. And a company says, "This individual, I'm sponsoring their work," and that will allow that individual to get a state license. That's part of the state license workflow, is an individual needs a company to sponsor them.
Right.
When the company sponsors them, they fill out some data that gets sent to the regulator. And now there's a few more fields for them to fill out when that information gets sent to the regulator. It's straightforward. It's that individual's title or position and its contact information at the company.
Okay.
So the first step is to look at your mortgage loan originators and update each of their relationships. Once that is complete, then those mortgage loan originators should log into NMLS and complete their steps. But before we get to that, I want to say one more thing about the companies.
Right.
So, in addition to that, companies have, in most cases, what's called control people, or they have branch managers. And those people fill out a certain form in NMLS, and that's called an MU2 form.
Okay.
And it serves to tell the regulators about who has control over a company. Those individuals also have to complete these steps. So a company needs to log into NMLS and open their MU1 form. The MU1 is the company form. And they go down to their MU2 forms and they send those MU2 forms out to their control people for them to complete this work. It's a pretty standard workflow. I think many of your listeners will be familiar with that. But all those steps I just talked about, we have step-by-step guidance on our resource center.
Perfect.
So, main thing for companies, update your company relationships with your loan originators and send out your MU2 forms for your control people.
Love it.
Now, yeah, so that's easy. It'll take a little longer for a company than an individual, depending on how many originators you have.
Right.
Then it's time to work on your individual forms. And I'm sure you have many listeners who might manage the company, but also have originator license themselves.
Exactly.
So, in addition, they will log into NMLS or instruct their loan originators to log into NMLS and open up their MU4 form. Within the MU4 form, there's two updates that everyone needs to make. The first, mentioned it earlier when we were talking, is employment history. A originator needs to submit 10 years of employment history to seek licensure. That's one of those standard requirements that came out of 2008. The regulator looks at your employment history as part of their review. Previously, a company would also report employment information for the individual separately. So there were two sources of data about where that individual is working. And what we've done with the update is we've made one golden source of truth about that individual's employer. It comes now from the company. So all that means is an individual is going to open their MU4 form, that's their individual form, and they're going to see now that their current employer is listed twice. Once is what they originally reported when they were seeking licensure, and the second time is now that direct input from the company that populates automatically in the form. And this is a one-time cleanup effort that we are asking originators to take as part of this update. So all they need to do is delete the redundant information that came from their first form that they filled out where they had to report it themselves. And going forward, this will never be an issue again. The originator will only have to have that company reported information on their form. So to
Yeah.
sum it up, yeah, do you have a question
Go
on
ahead.
that? I was going to say, to sum it up, they just, individual will see the instructions on the page, but they need to delete the self-reported duplicate employment.
So, and the way you explained it is great because it does make it very clear. So it sounds like what used to happen is the loan originator would go in, say, I work for ABC company, and sometimes they may not put the right company name in there. It's
Hmm.
a little bit different, or it's Inc. or it's LLC. So this way now you're taking that onus off of the LO and you're putting it onto the company, which is really where it should be anyway. So
Exactly.
I have a question for you. Um, if a loan originator logs in, how do they, if they only see one, I guess that's how they're going to know. How do they know if the company's done their job first? Do they have to keep logging? It's like, I'm going to start, bugging Sarah saying, Sarah, can you please come and
Yeah.
update this?
The good news is it doesn't matter which order things are taken in as
Okay.
far as submitting the form. So the individual doesn't have to wait for the company to take that first step. However, doing so will potentially prevent any follow-ups from the regulator. And the cheat sheet or the tip to know if your company has edited your relationship first is you will see a position title that's completed. Otherwise, if the position and title field is blank, that means that company hasn't taken the first step yet to update the relationship. But the form can be submitted without it, and then after the fact, the company should go in and put that information in. So
Okay.
we didn't want any holdups or any
Right.
bottlenecks. You can
Okay.
still submit the form, but it's a best practice to have the company go in and do their work first.
Okay. So log into the NMLS.
Hmm.
Update your employment history. If
Yeah.
you've been in for longer than 10 years, you only need 10 years. You don't have to go back
Yep.
that far.
Yep.
But get that in there.
Yeah.
And so, and there's obviously a place for them to fill that out. So probably, as far as best practices, when you're getting ready to log in, jot down what your dates are. It's like, where was I at this time? You don't need a full resume. You just need to put the information in there, right?
Yep. Exactly. Yes. Yep.
And then it makes get rid of what you put in. So basically, whatever you put in for the company you're with right now. So a question: if you're going back, so it's only showing the current company you're licensed with. So say if you were with ABC company 2 years ago and now you're with XYZ company, that ABC company is that's not going to be in there anymore, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we did a lot of research with the industry and with regulators prior to this update and many different listening sessions. And we decided to collectively not to migrate all of the historically um, reported company employment information. This is not a retroactive update. We've only brought over active current employments. So you
Okay.
do not need to go through your whole history and delete a bunch of redundant information. It's only your current employer that will show twice. But going forward with your current employer that you'll see today in the system, if that relationship ends and you perhaps change employments, that will stay on your record, and then a new employment record will fill the current employment line.
Okay.
Overall, this change actually makes changing employers much easier because everything is managed in one place. There's one source of data.
Great.
When you change employers prior to this, there were many different updates you had to make, and this reduces a lot of that.
Nice. I
Yeah.
love that. So making our life easier.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so we have a date, the deadline. So deadline to get this done is August 31st.
Yes, but there is one more thing you need to do while you're
Okay.
logged into
Oh,
NMLS, and
okay.
it's really
So don't
important.
leave yet. Yes.
So don't exit yet before you attest and submit. Luckily, the system will stop you from submitting if this hasn't been done yet.
Okay.
But there's another big change. I mentioned it earlier, and that is around the disclosures that a individual answers when they're submitting an application. Um, when an individual logs in now for the first time since April 18th, those disclosure questions, there's about 35 of them.
Okay.
They will be blank. And don't panic, they're supposed to be blank, but you need to answer them like it's the first time you've answered those questions.
Okay.
That's because these questions have gone through the first holistic review since the system launched. And so they have been updated to be clearer, to be more straightforward. They now have accompanying definitions that are really helpful. So you need to answer these though, like you haven't answered any questions in the past. They don't map necessarily to the old questions.
Okay.
It takes about 10 minutes to complete them, and we have a bunch of resources on our resource center if our users have any questions about the questions themselves to help you prepare. So fill out the disclosure questions after you've updated your employment history, and then hit submit and send that application away to your regulator, and you are done.
I love it. So really, I mean, you need to, I would recommend, block out 30 minutes. And
Yeah.
so, loan officers, you're getting logged in. First of all, you need to know your login. Um, Second of all, you need to have your work history. So have, your work history, your dates, who you worked for down, and then know the steps you're going to go through. So you're going to log in, you're going to update your work history, you're going to remove that one company information. You can tell if your company has or hasn't updated, because if they have updated, then that position will be completed. Is that right?
You got it. Yep.
Okay. And then you have about 10 minutes you need to spend to answer the 35 questions in the disclosures. So can you give me an idea on what some of those questions may cover? I mean, it's like things they should easily know. They don't have to go look up something, right?
Yeah, so the questions were developed by regulators in consultation with industry,
Okay.
and they cover an individual's history as far as, for example, they're questions about whether you've exercised control over a company, and during that time, did you do anything that the regulator might need to know about? Or there's a question about if you have a felony. There's a question about a misdemeanor. It used to be a misdemeanor for your entire life. Now
Right.
it's limited just to the past 10 years.
Okay.
So that limits the need to disclose that if it happened more than 10 years ago. So questions like that, asking about your history, and those give the regulators the information they need to make a judgment about the license application.
Okay. So basically, go in, answer those questions, 30 minutes, block out 30 minutes, put it on your calendar now. This needs to be done before August 31st.
Mhm.
If it doesn't get done by August 31st, and there's going to be more than one person,
I think so. Yeah, yeah. If it
what
doesn't get
doesn't get done, what happens to the license renewal? So that's going to be the hard stop, right?
Yes, so regulators will be looking for this during renewal to see if those submitting a renewal application have also completed these updates. So we recommend just completing them ahead of time to avoid any questions from the regulator, any follow-ups, any slowdowns. So make it as easy on yourself as possible.
I love it. And so, is there anything else that they need to know about? Oh, you have the recording. So we're going to make sure and include the recording. You did a webinar, so we're going to include
Mhm.
the recording. So that's going to be in the description. So make sure and do the recording. And I know you all have a lot of great resources that are available on the NMLS, right?
We do, yes. If you go to nmls.org, there is what we call a banner. So as soon as you log in, you will see information about this release, it's called the April release. And you can link directly from that homepage to all of these resources. My favorites are some step-by-step guides with screenshots and where to click, what order to take these steps in that you can use yourself as a company user or an individual, or you can pass to your coworkers or those you manage. So they're meant to be shared and distributed to help ease this process. So I recommend checking out those.
Yeah, and that's important to do that. Matt, obviously heading up our NAM Young Professional, you're building your team, and some of them are new. So those things
Mhm.
are important to you to be able to have access to those resources, right?
No, absolutely. And, I know how originators are, and they love to, if it's not a money making thing, they kind of throw it on the back burner. And I just want to encourage our listeners, do it on a Saturday morning. Keep your momentum from the week. Log in the MLS in the morning, update your stuff, check your emails. Just make it a part of your little flow over a weekend and just knock it out before it becomes a problem for you later. to stay ahead of it.
Yeah, and I'm always very reward based. So it's like, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes. And then after that, I get to go and have, my special chai tea latte so it's like, maybe
Absolutely.
give yourself a reward, it's like
Absolutely. I
something
love
like
that.
that. And I
Yeah,
mean, you are very much sales based, as you said. So important to be able
right.
to have that.
This is the dishes and laundry that you just have to do.
Yeah,
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 and with
absolutely.
any modernization of a system, there are give and gets, right? And so we think that these updates, in the short run, but definitely in the long run, are going to be really meaningful and helpful for compliance and transparency purposes. But with this update is the need to make these changes. And so, yeah, we appreciate everyone's willingness in the industry to make these updates because I think it will make a lasting impact in the system itself.
Yeah, and make it easier long term.
Mhm.
So let's looking long term because this is an
Sure.
update. Obviously, now this is done on Saturday, April 18th. But looking ahead, what changes or innovations that are coming up that you're most excited about?
Yeah, that I'm always excited to talk about what's coming next. So I work on the product team here at NMLS. We are looking ahead to the next phase. So we're kind of finishing up phase two, and phase three is coming this summer. It's a continuation of improving the mortgage loan originator experience, but now we're focused on how licensees can communicate with regulators. And it's perhaps surprising to learn that a regulator can communicate to a individual through the system today in NMLS, but that individual cannot communicate back. So it is a one-way street. Going
It's
forward,
kind of not surprising.
yes, which just means a lot happens over email or over the
Yeah,
Mhm.
phone, or
Yeah.
or users like especially new users are just confused because they want to ask a follow-up question and
and
they
they can't.
can't. Or they want to answer the question the regulator asked, take action in the system and let the regulator know they've done that, and they can't tell them. So the great thing about our next update is it is introducing a two-way communication between companies and individuals and the regulator. And it also is going to help with the question of whose ball is the court in and what do I do next? And
Wow.
that's a big one. We've
Wow.
been talking a little bit about the learning
Awesome.
curve to
Awesome.
NMLS. Matt, I'm sure with your young professionals group, you have maybe heard about the challenges of learning how to use the system. And we are doing a lot of work to introduce like this ability to track your tasks and to track what's outstanding and what you've done. And we think that's going to help that process of, okay, I've applied for my license, but now there's some next steps to do. What do I do next? Or, all right, I've received a request from a regulator for more information. What do I do next to answer that question and let them know I've done it? So we're innovating a lot around this right now. We have some software out for testing um, at this exact time that we're getting feedback on. We're going to continue that testing throughout the summer, and we're planning to release that in mid-August.
It's
Nice.
very efficient. You guys are going to just make everything efficient and faster and easier, and that's just so awesome to hear.
That's the goal. That's the focus is efficiency, reducing clicks,
Yep.
reducing the questions. So when you log in, where do you go first? We worked a lot on that with the system. So we'll continue to do that. Coming after phase three is phase four. Company and branches will get the same updates that individuals got last fall. So we're just continuing to iterate, take as much feedback as we can get, and then update as we go.
That's awesome.
I love it. That is
Awesome.
fantastic. Well, I tell you what, you and the team are doing a great job. We love hearing everything, and I know that our listeners are very excited. Probably not so much the work that they have to do. However, in the long term, it makes
Mhm.
it easier for them. So that's the whole thing in looking at this. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out to be able to do that. I know you're busy with a lot of the updates that are coming.
Mhm.
And we hope you'll come back again. So maybe we can have you back again this summer and you can talk about the next series.
Yeah, I would love to come back and tell you more about, by then we'll have a lot more information to share. So yeah, it'd be great. It's been awesome talking to you, Ginger and Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So make sure and tune in, like and subscribe, and follow us at the NAM podcast. We have a new episode every single week, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the NAM podcast, brought to you by the National Association of Mortgage Brokers. For more episodes, resources, and guest interviews, visit nampodcast.com. Don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you soon.